Welcome back, everyone. We are finally to the Skyworks Solutions video. If you've been following this channel for a while, been promising a deeper dive into Skyworks Solutions for close to since the beginning of this channel. I hope your patience has been rewarded. We got some interesting updates from Skyworks Solutions last week. They attended the JP Morgan Tech and Automotive Conference on January 5th. We heard from Skyworks Solutions Senior Vice President of Sales, Carlos Bori, some interesting updates on the business, where it's at today, and how they're attempting to grow into the automotive space. So here goes Skyworks Solutions. Perhaps I should back up first and introduce Skyworks Solutions, just in case you're not familiar with what the company does. So Skyworks Solutions is an integrated device manufacturer. So kind of like Texas Instruments, ON Semiconductor, even Intel itself, Skyworks Solutions both designs and manufactures its own chips. They own their own fabs. Specifically, Skyworks Solutions has focused on mobile connectivity. So if you have a smartphone, there's a really good chance that you have some Skyworks Solutions designs running around in your pocket, especially if that smartphone happens to be an Apple product, an iPhone. So Casey put together this chart here with a revenue breakdown from Skyworks Solutions most recent quarter and a little bit of info from this Tech and Automotive conference from last week. So here's currently where Skyworks Solutions is at. And you can see here, 58% of the company's revenue in fiscal year 2022 was from Apple, from the iPhone, the iPad, the watch, and so on. For years, this has been both a blessing for Skyworks Solutions, but also a curse. You know, what happens if Apple does what it has often done over the years and decides to start creating its own silicone chips, its own connectivity chips, and cut Skyworks Solutions out of the mix? Huge loss of business is at risk here for the company. But as it stands right now, Apple is still growing. That's a good thing for Skyworks Solutions. Within the other slice of this pie, Skyworks Solutions also sells chips to a lot of mobile device makers, including Samsung. They do work with Amazon, Google, all the Chinese smartphone manufacturers, you name it. Skyworks Solutions is all over the place. But biggest risk here, Apple is huge for Skyworks. They have been riding Apple's coattails for many years. Let's talk about this smaller sliver here, the $200 million in annualized revenue at last report that Skyworks Solutions is getting from the automotive market. So in mid-2021, Skyworks Solutions completed the acquisition of the infrastructure and automotive segment from Silicon Labs, ticker symbol SLAB. I did a deeper dive into Silicon Labs with Jose Najarro over on the Semiconductor Investing and More podcast a couple of months back. We'll stick the link to that below. Silicon Labs is now all in on Internet of Things. Skyworks Solutions branching off from its mobility chip, bread and butter, 5G chips basically, and is getting itself into infrastructure and automotive. What exactly does that look like? On their quarterly earnings calls, you'll often hear Skyworks Solutions talk about their broad markets revenue. That's basically everything outside of smartphones. So this automotive segment falls within that. Last quarter, it was 36% of total revenue. So automotive, just a small sliver of that broad markets portfolio, roughly 10% of the $2 billion in revenue in fiscal year 2022 at Skyworks. But a lot going on here. So at that Tech and Automotive conference, Carlos Bori, again, Skyworks Senior Vice President of Sales, talked about how this automotive portfolio includes a lot of 5G and connectivity. The modern car is also a connected car. Skyworks doing a lot of work to help automakers make the experience we have come to expect from our smartphone, somewhat similar to the same experience we now have in our vehicles. Constantly connected, we can access apps from a tablet-like device, a tablet-like computer within the cabin, and then also helping facilitate all the data that the car is taking in from the road and transferring it to some sort of central computer. But specifically where Skyworks falls in to this at this point is 5G and other connectivity chips. They're also doing some other interesting things specifically from that acquisition from Silicon Labs. Bori mentioned things like power isolation and management chips. So in both hybrid and electric vehicles, a lot of new chips that are needed to enable the battery to be charged and then for that power to flow from the battery to the different systems of the vehicle. Also different timing devices to help coordinate the movement and timing of data moving throughout the vehicle itself. This is a huge growth segment for Skyworks Solutions. Tens of billions of vehicles sold every year, and the list of parts that are electrical equipment that are chips is rapidly growing. So Skyworks Solutions, like everybody else, wants in on this very large consumer market, many of them still only just beginning to implement mobile connectivity and electric vehicle drivetrain technology into the mix. So at the conference, Bori alluded to the fact that this could be a 30% growth per year segment for Skyworks Solutions, even in 2023, even if the automotive market declines, like is beginning to be expected here as consumers tap the brakes on auto purchases because of inflation. The EV market could also slow down as a result, but this should still be a growth market for Skyworks Solutions in 2023 because the new vehicles that are being sold are increasing the amount of technology that gets packed into them. So that's the automotive segment. That could be a very, very strong double-digit growth segment for Skyworks. Still small at this point, though. The rest of that broad markets portfolio, again, everything outside of smartphones. So it could be PCs and tablets. It could be data centers, also 5G infrastructure. We did some videos in the last couple of weeks about internet infrastructure upgrades. Bori mentioned that in fiscal 2022, they kind of had a nice surprise. Companies like Verizon and AT&T ended up spending a lot more money with Skyworks Solutions on 5G network backhaul. So that's all the infrastructure before the actual wireless signal hits our phone that our smartphones interact with. Mobile networks having to put a lot of work into upgrading their actual physical infrastructure to support 5G. Skyworks Solutions is there overall. So Bori mentioned Apple. They do expect very, very small, maybe single-digit growth from Apple in the coming years. But this broad markets portfolio will be a strong double-digit grower. Overall, maybe high teens, low 20% range when you factor in the automotive, the other wireless products outside of smartphones, infrastructure, all of that. When you pair it with the Apple business, Skyworks Solutions looks like maybe a 10 to 15% revenue growth company in the coming years. Now, there are going to be some bumps in the road with this growth outlook, specifically in 2023, because of the smartphone downturn, more specifically, the downturn in Android devices. Apple, I think, still expected to grow slightly in 2023. Android down big, but overall, 10 to 15% revenue growth, let's say over the next 5 years. But I think Skyworks Solutions will be able to generate higher earnings per share growth on average over the next 5 years. And I think this chart illustrates how they can do that. This is a look at the company's share buybacks. So Skyworks has been around for decades. They're highly profitable, and they return much of their free cash flow to shareholders via a small and growing dividend, and more specifically through opportunistic share buybacks. You can see here in fiscal year 2022, they ramped up share buybacks very aggressively as the stock fell in price. 975 million returned via this outlet to shareholders. I think the company will continue to do this over time, but I like that they did this during the bear market when the stock got cheap. One thing that I think is really impressive about Skyworks Solutions is despite these up and down cycles with their markets, specifically smartphones, they're able to hold on to their high profit margins. I think a lot of this has to do with the fact that they are an integrated device manufacturer, an IDM, sort of like Texas Instruments, who they list as a competitor, but differentiated from a lot of others because of their focus on connectivity. But at any rate, because they're an IDM, I think they're really able to tightly integrate their design and their sales with their actual manufacturing operations and hold on to these really nice margins. Just a quick look here at some of the expectations and the valuations based on those expectations in the next year. You can see here, next 12-month price to earnings, just shy of 10. Next 12 months, free cash flow, less than eight times expected next 12-month free cash flow. This company has actually traded below 8 next 12-month expected free cash flow for quite some time now. The market has been expecting a cyclical slump for Skyworks Solutions for well over a year. That slump is just now starting to hit. The good news here, though, is Bori mentioned on that conference last week that they see the cyclical slump in smartphones finishing up here in March 2023, maybe worst case scenario, June 2023, but they're still getting some nice stable sales from Apple, as well as the growth from this broad markets and automotive portfolio. Lots of profitability hitting the bottom line for shareholders and fueling Skyworks Solutions share buybacks. Now, I didn't even talk about some of the other growth initiatives Skyworks is working on right now. They recently had a joint press release with Broadcom, Skyworks and Broadcom working a lot together on new Wi-Fi equipment, specifically the current upgrade cycle underway with Wi-Fi 6E. Perhaps by the end of 2023, Wi-Fi 7 rollouts begin. Skyworks involved with that and expected to see some growth from that as well. Overall, though, I think the stock is really, really cheap at this point. I think it's a really compelling value. I like the stock. Personally, this is one that I will add more to. I already have a position. I've had a position for years, and I'm looking at adding to it here the first few months of 2023. Perhaps I'll do so once a month through, say, March. Stay tuned on this, though. We should be getting an earnings update from Skyworks here within the next month or so, and perhaps they'll have some further guidance for us on what to expect during their fiscal year 2023. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you found this information on Skyworks Solutions helpful. We'll have some more updates on the automotive technology segment coming soon. It's also earnings season, so it's that time of year again. Lots of financial updates from chip stocks coming your way. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you don't miss a video. Thanks for tuning in. See you again soon.